Welcome to Wine Soundtrack South Africa. Listen to the passion with which producers narrate their winery and their world. In 30 answers, discover their stories, personalities, and passions.
Hello, friends and listeners of Wine Soundtrack. This is Morena Kalo, and today I am joined by Pierre Rabie from Giant Periwinkle Wines. Pierre, a very warm welcome to you this morning. Please, will you just tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Well, yeah, I make wine here close to the southernmost tip of Africa for Giant Periwinkle Wines, but I'm also a lawyer. I'm an advocate in Cape Town. For those of you that wouldn't know what that is, it's basically like a barrister. If you're from England, you'll understand that. If you're from the United States, you won't. It's just a lawyer then. So I practice law and I make wine. It's basically what I do.
And Giant Periwinkle, when did that come to life?
Well, I planted some vines in Baardskeerdersbos in 2009. We had a small holding there, and my dad and I, we always dreamt of having our own vines. Father grew up on a wine farm. He was the eldest son. He didn't inherit the farm, unfortunately. But I spent many a holiday there with my grandmother and my dad. And so we've always had a passion for wine farming and viticulture. So planted some vines in Baardskeerdersbos. And then I needed a name for my wines. And I go diving for these sea snails, these giant periwinkles, very often. And I was diving close to Souderstrand. And I saw about 20 of them in a crevice, and usually you struggle to find one or two or three. I mean, they kind of hide away, and I just thought that was a sign. And it's also one of the very few things that sounds better in English than in Afrikaans, the giant periwinkle, because the Afrikaans word alle krik, it's a bit of a weird one. Because, generally Afrikaans is a very descriptive language, but I thought Giant Periwinkle sounded quite fancy and grand, so that's why I chose the name.
I love that story. Tell me, how much land do you have under vine at the moment?
Well, the Giant Periwinkle, the farm itself, the farm is called South Cape Vineyards. The farm is about 50 hectares. 45 of that, we're part of a conservancy, so we just have fynbos on it. The rest, we have 1 hectare of olives and then 2.8 hectares of vines. So very small vineyard that we've got here.
And at the moment, what is your production in terms of wine volume?
All right, so we've got about, I'd say 1.2 hectares of Sauvignon Blanc, maybe a little bit more. Then we've got some Semillon, and also the southernmost vineyard that you can buy Pinotage from. We've got about 0.8 hectares of that. So the Pinotage, we get about 1,000 litres a year, which is about 2.5 tons. Then from the Sauvignon Blanc, we probably harvest anything 4 to 6 tons. But we do buy in from our neighbouring farm, Le Monde. They're also in Baardskeerdersbos, or close to Baardskeerdersbos. So we do buy in some grapes from them because we just don't produce enough ourselves.
And then for you, do you have like a seminal moment that made you realise that wine is in fact something a little bit more special?
Well, do you want the serious answer or the joke answer? I can probably give you, I can give you both. But no. Well, the seminal moment, the joke one, was probably when I was 9 years old and I made my first wine on the wine farm that I told you about, and these bottles of wine exploded against the whitewashed walls and I got a big hiding. That was a seminal moment, whether it was positive or negative. That's for you to decide. But I mean, it's probably not something like one moment. It's more like a series of events. It's those Sunday lunches when I was 12, 13, 14 years old, and my father would pour me some wine and we would talk about the wine and how it paired with the food. So it's not one seminal moment on the serious part. It's more like a series of moments, series of memories, family, friends. That would be my answer in the serious vein.
Okay. Tell me about Giant Periwinkle wine. What is the most expensive bottle, your flagship perhaps, in your range, and what's in it, and what does it cost?
So where are you buying this? Depends on where you buy it. When you buy it from the farm, our most expensive wine at this stage is our Kelp Forest Syrah. It's 275 rands a bottle, so it's not crazy expensive. The wine that we're most well known for is the Blanc Fumé. It's nearly always sold out. It sells for about 220, 230 rands a bottle, and it's really special. We're waiting for the launch of the 2021. We're not going to launch it yet, probably towards the end of the year. But yeah, that'll be. It's on allocation, and like half of it is already sold out. But we'll see. Maybe if you run along at the end of the year and you nag me, then you might get a bottle or two of that. But that would be the one that I would go for. I love all the other wines and our Pinotage. I mean, Pinotage is something really special, especially our 2020 that we currently sell. We sell it for 200 rands a bottle. Awesome wine. It's really light, vibrant, alive. Pinotage, when you think about it, it's got these two tiny parents, like light parents, like Pinot Noir, Cinsault, and then in South Africa, then they have this huge sun. Why should it be that way? I mean, these tiny parents should have a tiny sun. I mean, so that's the way I make it. I make it elegant, and I make it so that you can basically see that it's derived from Pinotage or from Pinot Noir and Cinsault.
Yeah, I think we're seeing much more of that approach when it comes to Pinotage, and I think it might have been one of the things that winemakers in the past have kind of done a little bit wrong, is trying to create this massively bold, over-extracted wine and treat Pinotage like a Cabernet Sauvignon in the cellar, when really it needs to be handled with kitty cat gloves. Tell me, getting down to wine as a consumer, what do you enjoy drinking? Red, white, sparkling?
I would say I drink about 60% white and 40% red. Especially in summertime, South Africa being a hot place. I really enjoy white wines. I like Sauvignon Blanc, I like Chardonnay, I like Chenin Blanc. All different, and I also like weird, like strange cultivars. I recently developed a board game about wine cultivars and different cultivars of the world, and it's busy being published. So I learned a lot about different cultivars and enjoy the different tastes and the different textures and the different pairings you can do with all of these fantastic cultivars that we didn't even know about. I mean, we've got hundreds and hundreds of cultivars. Even in South Africa, I think we've got more than 100 registered cultivars, but in a country like Italy, they've literally got hundreds of cultivars. So they even know what to plant where. They're spoiled for choice.
That really is an interesting thing that, unfortunately, you tend to follow where your market demand lies, and the market demand lies with the popular, well-known varietals. And you do tend to take a rather huge risk, especially in a country like South Africa, to plant and make wine with something that is a little bit more unusual. I'm actually you mentioned food pairing, and we're going to get there, but you just said something about a board game.
Yeah.
Tell me more. This is so interesting.
Yeah, so it's called Conquer Wine, and the idea is you invite friends. Each person that comes to the game to play the game brings 2 international wines and 1 of their country, and they bring them all obviously in a sock. So it's a blind tasting. Then there's a blind tasting round where you present the wine to the others, you knowing what it is, and they have to guess the cultivar, the vintage, the area where it's produced from, and the country that it's from. And then after that, there's a general knowledge round, and then one progresses, and you try and, if you, for example, in a blind tasting identified an Australian Sauvignon Blanc, then you'd conquer Australia, you'd conquer Sauvignon Blanc, and the idea is then there are 2 ways of winning the game. The one is like the one-day test match kind of thing where you need to get 100 points. So for each thing you get right, you get 5 points. Or the 5-day test match where You want to conquer all the countries, all the cultivars. That takes quite a few hours, and you get quite inebriated playing the game. But yeah, it's great fun.
That is very, very cool. Tell me about wine pairing and with food. Do you have a recipe that you follow? Is there what guidance would you give to someone who's new to pairing food and wine?
See, with me, I like to kind of break the mold sometimes, and this whole idea of white wines can't pair with red meat, and it's a bit of a fallacy. I think one needs to look more towards the structure of the wine, to the acidity in the wine, whether it's oaked, whether it's not oaked, even the age of the wines, and then try and pick up certain notes that you think will work with the food. And I mean, it's kind of a taste thing and a passion thing, and you just know whether it will work or not. And sometimes it doesn't, but most times it works. For example, tomato, any dish with tomatoes, it's got lots of acidity. It generally goes very well with Sauvignon Blanc. So whether it's meatballs in a tomato sauce and it's a red meat, it'll still go very well with a Sauvignon Blanc. Especially with our Sauvignon Blancs from this area where we have natural high acidity and not added acid. I mean, it's natural acidity. Then it picks up nicely. And something like the Giant Periwinkle that I talked about, the sea snail, it's got such a unique, salty kind of taste. And our Sauvignon Blancs have a very low pH, and that contributes to the saltiness, the salty taste that you get. And one of your big taste receptor areas in your tongue is the salty taste, and that the low pH stimulates that, and that's why you get this saltiness. Our wines are close to the ocean, and generally all under 10 kilometers, but yeah, you taste the ocean in our wines.
The salinity. I can imagine pairing your Sauvignon Blanc with some Giant Periwinkle. That could be quite a cool pairing, I think. Yeah,
really nice.
Yeah,
really nice. That and something like the cob that we catch here, fresh cabillaud, or some Arniston oysters. These wild oysters are awesome. You even pick up the oyster shell flavors on some of the Sauvignon Blancs.
You're getting me going now. Seriously. Okay. So many wine makers have a special relationship with either the grapes on the vine or the vines themselves, or once they're in the cellar, in the barrels. Do you kind of have a relationship where you might talk to them or kind of have a special, deeper emotional attachment?
Talk to the vines?
Yeah.
No, you see, I do a lot of curatorship applications where we actually appoint curators to look after people that might not be totally sane. So I don't want to have a curator appointed to myself. So weirdest thing I've actually done in the vineyards is we've really got bird problems, and then I asked Wim de Vet, who looks after some of our vines sometimes and presents some tastings, to hang some CDs up in the vineyards, and I saw AC/DC and Kylie Minogue and these things hanging in the vineyard. I mean, that's probably the weirdest thing I did to them. I've never spoken to the vines. I like walking through them and tasting the grapes and just looking at them, but yeah, never had a conversation with them. Not that I'd admit.
Not in public, no. That curatorship is looming. Pierre, when you were little, what did you want to be? I mean, you've kind of transitioned, while even though you're still acting as a barrister or advocate. Was that what you saw in your future?
It started out, I wanted to be a doctor. My mother is a pharmacist, and I worked in the pharmacy quite often. And then once there was a little boy that came in, and he cut his finger, and my mother asked me just to take him to the back, just to wash his hands, so you could see how badly it was cut. And I saw the blood, and I passed out, and I hit my head on the basin. And I also had to go to the doctor for stitches. So that's when I decided, I mean, maybe this doctor thing's not going to work for me. The embarrassment would just be too much, that first operation when I pass out. So then I switched, and then I thought, maybe law. I'll do law. and always had the passion for winemaking, also for law. I studied a very long time. I did a BCom and an LLB and an LLM and an LLD, and I lectured at the University of the Free State, and then came to the bar, started to practice, had some more freedom, made a little bit of money because I could use the money to make wine. I mean, that's unfortunately how things work. Is you need money to make wine. Wine isn't a very profitable enterprise, even though a lot of people might think so. Mm-hmm. It really isn't. It's more a passion thing, and yeah.
Okay. So when you're not working either in the vineyard, the cellar, or in your practice, what keeps you busy?
Well, I've got two beautiful children. They're 10 and 7. Spend time with them. We like to go fishing, do outdoor stuff, cooking, drinking wine, playing board games.
And do you support any sporting teams or sporting individuals, anything like that?
Well, yeah, I played some rugby and I played some cricket. I love watching rugby. I also enjoy watching cricket. But the only sport I'll do now would be like walking along the beach or walking between the vines. I'm not talking to them. And fishing and maybe a bit of hunting as well. I enjoy that. Yeah, that's about it.
And are you into music at all? If so, any favorite genres, artists, songs even?
Yeah, I like all kinds of music. Anything from opera to rock music. I think there's like a special song for a special occasion, and sometimes do these wine and music pairings where it's like a general knowledge kind of thing where I ask the people why do they think I paired this song with this wine, and if they can explain it, then they might win a bottle of wine or something in the end. So it's fun. I mean, music is fun. It just enriches our lives, and yeah, it's something special, something to be enjoyed, like wine.
Indeed. Well, hold that thought, because we've got something coming up later. Movies, is that something you're into at all?
I am. Yeah, I like Tarantino stuff, like weird stuff like Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs, and I like Snatch. Don't know when last you saw it. I saw it the other day again, and it was cool. It's like these old movies that kind of mean something. And then I actually enjoyed this recent Top Gun movie. I thought it was quite cool. So yeah, I like movies if they're well made and tell a good story, and generally they make you think about life, and yeah, then I enjoy them. But I mean, not like just another romantic comedy. I mean, that just gets a bit too much after a while.
So you're used to advising people, right? But what would you say was one of the best pieces of advice you've ever received?
In winemaking terms, or anything? Well, it's basically to be patient. I have this problem that, you know, when you do something, then you want it now, and you want things to work out now the way you want it. And it's kind of probably my personality trait. And if you don't get it right, then you get frustrated. And it's something that I think I've learned with age. I mean, my father would always tell me, just be patient, just wait a bit, just things will work out the way it should. And I always thought that was like a lackadaisical way of going about things. But now that I'm a bit older and I've thought about things a bit more and I've seen things happen that way, sometimes it's good to just be patient and wait. And yeah, wait. I'm not saying you shouldn't do anything. I mean, you should obviously get off your ass and work. But yeah, sometimes you'll get the results a bit later than expected.
It doesn't all happen as you necessarily want it to. There's too many factors at play that you know really influence our lives along the way. And yeah, I must say I take a very fatalistic approach on life. If it's meant to be, it'll be, and it'll happen in the way it's meant to happen. Do you think think we will still be drinking wine? Well, not you and I, but humans will still be drinking wine in, say, 2,000 years' time?
I think so. I think it's so ingrained part of our culture that we will. Maybe there will be some alien species drinking wine with us. Maybe they'll also be making wine. We don't know. No, 2,000 years, it's a long time, but we've been drinking wine probably for longer than that. So I'm sure we will.
If you were to go to a deserted island, what 3 wines would you take with you? Any 3 from anywhere?
Can I take boxes, or is this just like 3 bottles? Because it's going to be a very bland and dreary and lonely deserted island if I only have 3 bottles of wine.
3 Jeroboams?
Okay. All right. I'll definitely take a Sauvignon Blanc for the warm days when I get some nice seafood. And then I'll probably have a lighter red, something like a Cinsault or a Pinot Noir, and I'll also have a bigger, more fleshy red, something like a Shiraz probably as well. So those will be my 3 bottles that I go with.
Are there any winemaking areas anywhere in the world that you would like to explore?
I have been to France, been to Italy, and I really admire both those countries' winemaking tradition and what they do. The region that is close to me, close to my heart, would be Sancerre, because my Blanc Fumés that I make kind of have those notes, and a lot of people have remarked that they Sancerre-like. I don't think so. I think they're Cape Agulhas-like. They're individual and they taste like Cape Agulhas wines, but I can see some markers and some shared markers in the wine. So Sancerre, and then the whole Loire, most of France actually. It's a nice place, and then Italy, just tasting all of the different wines in Italy, and just maybe to have a great Nebbiolo sometimes, and they're so expensive and they're so hard to come by. Just want to go there and meet some Italian winemaker that takes me into his cellar and says, listen, no worries about money, let's just have a nice bottle of Nebbiolo, and then maybe it'll win me over. But at this stage, I'm still more of a Pinot Noir guy than a Nebbiolo guy. But then French Pinot Noir.
French Pinot Noir. Okay, we're almost done. However, before we finish, we're going to play a little game, as I alluded to earlier, and it's one that you seem to be familiar with. So I'm going to name 3 varieties, and you're going to pair each of those with a song, an artist, a genre, whatever comes to mind.
Okay.
Not
with food.
Not with food. No. So I think let's start with Nebbiolo.
That's tricky. Nebbiolo. Yes, that's tricky. You stumped me on this one. Maybe go to the next one, then I can come back to Nebbiolo.
Okay, we can come back to Nebbiolo. We have to throw in Pinotage here.
All right, Pinotage, it'll have to be something South African, and if it's my Pinotage, then I'll probably pair something from the Baardskeerdersbos orkest. I don't know if you know them. Mani Boinkie, he's recently deceased, but I actually watched him play a live set in this room where we're sitting. So the Pinotage would be a pairing with the Baardskeerdersbos orkest.
And then I think it would be wrong not to bring Sauvignon Blanc into this.
Sauvignon Blanc is a tricky one. When it's a fruity Sauvignon Blanc, then it'll be something like Sitting on the Dock of the Bay. When it's something more serious, and when we talk about maybe something Etta James, At Last. If it's like a really serious, like Blanc Fumé, then I'd go Etta James, At Last. The Nebbiolo, I mean, that's a tricky one. The thing is, the only ones I've had, they weren't great. And everyone goes on about this. So you can help me out. Let's talk about music that everyone talks about and that you really haven't kind of got your claws into. What would that be for you?
For me, music that I can't get to grips with is jazz. I can't get into jazz. There's some lighter jazz if it's kind of in the background, yes, but there's some of the jazz for me personally at the moment is noise. I struggle with jazz.
I like blues. I really do. I kind of agree with you on the jazz point. I mean, when it's really serious jazz, I struggle with it. When it's like lighter stuff, yeah, so okay, cool. I mean, let's pair maybe hello with jazz then.
I love the way you got to that. Pierre, I really appreciated our time this morning. Thank you so much. Before we sign off, please will you just share with our listeners where they'll be able to find Black Oyster Catcher online, where they might be able to find you on social media or buy the wines, anything like that?
Okay, so Black Oyster Catcher, they'll find here Black Oyster Catcher close to Elim.
I'm so sorry.
I'm just joking.
Pierre, thank you so much for spending your morning with me. I really appreciated the time getting to know you and finding a little bit more about Giant Periwinkle. Before we sign off, please can you just share with our listeners where they can find Giant Periwinkle online on social media and where they might be able to find your wines?
Yes, okay, so our website is www.giantperiwinkle.com and also www.giantperiwinkle.co.za. We're on Twitter at Giant Periwinkle, Instagram and Facebook. And come and visit us about 3 kilometers outside the quaint little town of Baardskeerdersbos.
Thank you so much. And just for our listeners, Baardskeerdersbos is, if I had to translate that directly, it means beard shaver's bush. So it's one of those interesting little colloquialisms that we have here. And
I can actually tell you where the name is derived from. All right, so actually ties into our wines. Our Sauvignon Blanc is called the Wind Scorpion. Our Pinotage is the Sun Spider. Now, both of these things are actually named after it's a solifuge. I don't know if you know what that is. It's something between a spider and a scorpion. In Afrikaans, they call it a roeman, a spinnekop. And these things, actually, they're very sensitive to sunlight. So when you walk, they will chase your shadow, but they actually just want to be in your shadow. So a lot of people think that they chase you. But what they also do is they line their nests with animal fur. And the old folks used to think that while you were sleeping, they would come and they would cut your beard or your hair and then line their nests with that. And there were a lot of these creatures in this little forest there, and that's where the name comes from, Baardskeerdersbos.
Well, there you go. You've certainly left us with an interesting little tale to ponder on. Thanks again, Pierre. It was a great pleasure.
Thanks for listening to a new episode of Wine Soundtrack South Africa. For details and updates, visit our website winesoundtrack.com.